I guess we'll wait for Ricardo to join. By the way, congratulations for getting Lima into the CNCF sandbox.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Hey, good morning, good evening, everyone. Let's give it another couple of minutes, or maybe some more people to join.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
How are things, Akihiro? How are things in Japan?
Oh, yeah, it's 0 a.m. country in Japan.
12, it's midnight?
Yeah, midnight in Japan.
Oh, wow. Well, thanks for joining the meeting. We're excited to have you here and talk about the Lima project. We could just get started. I think the meeting is actually recorded, so if like somebody wants to watch the meeting later, they can do it. So go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Should I share my screen?
Okay.
Can you see
Yep.
my screen?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, yeah. So Lima is a command line tool to provide Linux virtual machines, typically on macOS for running continuity. And Lima joined CNCF Sandbox last month. Thank you for all contributors to make this possible. So why do we need to run continuous on macOS? So we know that 2022 is the year of the Linux desktop, as in every year. So we could just run continuous on desktop and laptop, but ordinary developers still need macOS or Windows laptops. So running continuous on macOS is almost just for the dev environment and test environment. I don't think it's the best fit for running a production server. So Lima focuses on dev environments and test environments. And there are some existing methods like Docker desktop for Macintosh, but Docker desktop for Macintosh is a proprietary product, so it's not that best fit. And we just install Docker and Kubernetes inside Linux virtual machine without using Docker desktop. Maybe peer you, but it was not easy. And so some virtual machine products like VMware Fusion and Power is proprietary. And VirtualBox is free and open source, but Box isn't going to support processors like M1 and M2. And QEMU is free and open source and supports ARM processors, but it was not easy to access the host file system from containers. And also, it was not easy to access the container ports from the host OS. So we have to create Lima. Lima is kind of similar to Windows subsystem for Linux version 2, but Lima is for Mac OS host, and Lima is free and open source. And Lima provides automatic host file system sharing to expose the host file system to the guest OS and containers inside the guest OS. It also provides automatic port forwarding. The local host of the guest OS is exposed to the host as a local host. And Lima has a built-in integration for continuity. And it's really easy to get started with Lima. So you can just install Lima with Blue install Lima, and Lima CTL starts to start Lima, and you can use Lima and CTL run to run continuity containers. So I can show demo. Can you see my terminal?
Yeah, we can see your screen. I have a question. So you so this that's something.
Sorry, I was showing to my terminal.
Oh, your terminal. Yeah.
Now
we can see it.
Can you see my terminal?
Yeah, we can see it. One question is that I have you. So this actually works on M1 Max too, or
both Intel and ARM.
Got it. Okay, cool.
In this laptop, I'm using Mac OS Intel processors, but you can use Lima on M1 and M2 as well. And I'm in the home directory, and I have some file on my Mac OS home directory, and just type Lima to, I can switch to the Linux. So now uname A returns Linux, and still I can access the home directory of Mac OS, and I can see the file on Mac OS home directory in my terminal. And I can use nado.ctl to run containers. And I can use car localhost to access container from the guest. And after switching back to macOS, I can still access the container as localhost like this.
So what process is this? A process on it's like a VM, or no, it's not a VM, right? It's just like a Linux subsystem for Windows, or
so it's similar to Windows subsystem for Linux version 2, but it's not similar to version 1 because we are using a QEMU.
Got it. So QEMU for Mac, right?
Yeah.
So,
have you considered maybe?
Sorry.
Question. Yeah, it's okay. I just had a question. Have you considered maybe using Apple's virtualization framework as well?
Maybe in the future, but it's proprietary.
Right.
The default will remain QEMU.
Okay.
And I can see my screen.
Yep.
Lima is acronym of Linux machine. So we originally designed Lima as a Container D machine to mimic Docker machine, but for Container D. But the scope was extended immediately to cover other use cases too. So you can just run Docker inside Lima too. And also you can use Lima for non-container applications as well. But Lima still focuses on Container D and K3S. So Container D with Lima. So Container D is a default standard container runtime. It's a CNCF graduate project. And Container D is not just made for Kubernetes. And Container D provides Docker compatible command line interface too. It's NADCTL. NADCTL is acronym of Container D CTL, but it's pronounced like NADCTL. And the command line interface is just like Docker. So you can use NADCTL build to build containers and NADCTL run to run containers. And unlike Docker, Container D in NADCTL has a lot of cutting edge features like basic print, IPFS, also crypto, and faster rootless networking. And Lima provides built-in support for Container D and NADCTL. And so you can build an image from a Docker file on the macOS home directory. And Lima can expose the containers TCP ports to the local host of the macOS host. And Lima even supports running Intel containers on M1 and M2, and vice versa, using TOMIS-TD/BFMT. So you can use D-, run dash platform AMD64 to run AMD64 containers on M1 and M2, and vice versa with dash platform equal AMD. Sorry, dash platform equal ARM64. And
sorry, the question. So this actually builds the last command builds two container images, right? So it builds like AMD64 and
one container image with two contents.
I see. Okay, got it.
So image has a JSON document called index, and index has two manifest documents for AMD64 and ARM64.
Makes sense. Thanks.
And K3S with Lima. So K3S is a lightweight Kubernetes distribution, and it's hosted in the CNCF as a sandbox project. And K3S adopts Container D as a CLI runtime, and it works with Lima too, like commands showing this slide. And you can also use Docker inside Lima with Lima CTL start template :/Docker. And so the original design of Lima was only to support Container D, but the scope is extended to support Docker Engine too. So Docker Engine is open source version of Docker. It runs under Apache RSS version 2, but it doesn't have the GUI because the GUI is a proprietary component. And you can even use Hotman as well with Lima CTL start template :/Hotman. So the next topic is how it works. So the hypervisor is just vanilla QEMU, and it supports both Intel and ARM, and even supports emulating Intel on ARM and emulating ARM on Intel. It's pretty slow, but anyway, it works. And one FAQ is that why not use Apple's virtualization framework? So because it's proprietary, and other macOS 12 it doesn't support UEFI and legacy BIOS. It only supports running VM Linux kernel directly, but it's going to change in macOS 13. So maybe we can use virtualization framework to use UEFI to run regular Ubuntu virtual machines. But the default will remain QEMU because QEMU is free and open source.
So just out of curiosity, so like, I don't know, like if you're supporting Apple's virtualization framework, so it'd be shipped as like another driver, or and like the default would remain as QEMU.
Yeah, so default will remain QEMU, but probably we can have a command line option like dash driver equal Apple's virtualization framework.
Got it. Thank you.
And the next is file system sharing. So the current version of Lima uses reverse SSHFS. So macOS works as an SSH client, but as an SFTP server. And the Linux dist works as an SSH server, but as a SFTP client, so that we don't need to have any extra TCP service on the macOS host. But this is not stable because the file system can be corrupted when the SSH connection was shut down. So we are going to switch the file system driver to BartIO 9P PCI, also known as BartRefresh. This will be in Lima version 1.0, and Lima 1.0 will be probably released by the end of the year. And this is a BartFS, not BartIO-FS. These are very similar names, but unrelated. So we can't use BartIO-FS even though BartIO-FS is faster than BartFS. Because QEMU still doesn't implement BartIO-FS for macOS hosts. And on the other hand, Apple's virtualization framework supports BartIO-FS, but it's proprietary and lacks other functionalities like UEFI as macOS 12. So maybe we can implement BartIO-FS with virtualization framework, but it's not going to be the default. Or potentially we can extend QEMU to support BartIO-FS, but it's likely to take much time.
How much faster is BartIO-FS?
I don't have data, but maybe 5 or 10 times faster, maybe like that.
Got it.
Is initial support for Mac BartIO-FS, right? The latest version.
Sorry?
I believe in one of the latest versions, in the 7 release of QEMU, that they added initial support for Mac for BartIO-FS. As far as I remember, I'm looking it up now.
I don't think the current version of QEMU supports but iOFS for macOS. So it supports but iOFS for Linux host, but we use macOS host, so we can't use QEMU.
Right. It was 9 PFS that they added in the 7 dot release for macOS.
Yeah, so it's 9P, so it's Brat IO 9P TCI. Yeah, so we have 9P in QEMU version 7. So Lima version 1.0 will use Brat IO 9P TCI.
Will there be a fallback to reverse SHFS in 1.0 and higher?
Yeah, so user can switch the file system driver via command line interface in case they have some issues. And anyway, we will have to continue support for reverse SHFS on Rocky Linux and Alma Linux because Rocky Linux and Alma Linux doesn't support 9P device.
Got it. Thank you.
And next topic is port porting. So the guest ports are accessible as local host from the host. This is accomplished by watching guest events and running SSH-L to set up SSH TCP port quality. And for watching guest event, Lima watches /proc/net/TCP for non-CNI ports. And Lima also scans IP tables and audit net filter CFZ for exposing CNI ports. So CNI is Container Networking Interface. It's used by Container D in CTL and Kubernetes. And for networking, the default networking driver is QEMU's -netdev user. It's also known as SRP. So with SRP, we don't need any root privilege of macOS. But the guest IP is not reachable from the host and other VMs. But this is not a huge deal for Lima because Lima setups TCP port forwarding for all local host ports. But this is still problematic for multi-node Kubernetes cluster.
Would there be a use case for a multi-node Kubernetes, or just, I mean, the goal is just to have a more like a single node Kubernetes with Lima as a default?
So some people want to emulate multi-node Kubernetes on a single laptop, just like for simulating node failures.
Got it. So it's not supported yet, basically. So,
Yeah, but we support multi-node Kubernetes via Socket VMnet. So Socket VMnet is an optional component to assign real IP addresses. It's reachable from host and other VMs, and even from other hosts. So you can create multi-node Kubernetes cluster using multiple Lima instances.
got it.
And you can even use other hosts in your physical network when you enable bridge mode. But significant so you need the root privilege of macOS for running Socket VMnet demo. But we still don't need root privilege for QEMU. So this is different
So
from.
you go back to, sorry, I have a question. So So basically, it's in bridge mode. That means you need to is it DHCP or how, or the
Yeah.
IP addresses need to be assigned through DHCP or?
Yeah. So with bridge mode, you need to have some DHCP server on your Wi-Fi.
Okay. Yeah.
But there's also NAT mode. So host macOS also can provide DHCP server
Got it. Got it.
for running multiple VMs inside a single laptop, but it's not accessible from
Got it.
other hosts on Wi-Fi.
Yeah, thanks.
And socket VMnet is different from QEMU's .NET VMnet dash share. So it's available since QEM 7.1, but because QEMU's native VMnet shared needs running the entire QEMU as the root. But on the other hand, Suite VMnet doesn't need root for QEMU. We still need root for running socket VMnet demo, but the scope is much narrower compared to QEMU, so it's more secure. And there are some third-party free open source projects using Lima, like Lima GUI and Kolima and Rancher Desktop. So Lima GUI provides Qt GUI for Lima. Qt is Qt. It's it's a GUI framework, and Kolima means continuous in Lima. So basically, it's very similar to Lima, but Kolima uses Docker by default. So functionality is almost the same as vanilla Lima, but Kolima provides some different user experience for Docker users. And Rancher Desktop is a K3S distribution with Lima and GUI and with Rancher's dashboard. Also, Rancher Desktop provides a GUI for functionality mobile and K3S, and it has dashboards like shown in this screenshot. And it also works on Linux and also on Windows. So for Windows, Rancher Desktop uses WSL version 2, but for Mac OS, it uses Lima. And Rancher Desktop is free and open source. So to recap, Lima provides a quick way to run Constantine and K3S on macOS with automatic host file system sharing and with automatic port forwarding. So you can install Lima, install Lima and Lima CTL start and Lima .ctl run to run container and expose the TCP port to the macOS. And so you can just use curl localhost to access container. And we have a community. So we have GitHub discussions on the GitHub repo, and we have a Slack channel on the CNCF Slack. That's all. Do you have other questions?
Any questions from anybody?
Just that this was great. Out of curiosity, what all do you have on the roadmap going forward for 1.0?
So after releasing 1.0, probably we can support virtualization framework as an opt-in, so that a virtualization framework has better file system support. So it has a Bataio FS, so user can opt in to use virtualization framework in Lima version like 2.0 or maybe 3.0.
Got it. And when is 1.0 like planned to be released?
Sorry.
When are you planning to release 1.0?
So it's very likely by the end of the year, but maybe we can find other performance issues of about IO90 PCI. So potentially the release can be delayed. So there are some drawbacks. So but IO90 PCI is more secure and tolerant of internet failure, but it's not really faster than SSHFS. So yeah, so it is very difficult to switch the default, but we are trying to do that by the end of the year.
Yeah, I can imagine. Thanks. This was great.
I can hear it. So are you the only maintainer for this project now? Do you have multiple organizations or anybody else contributing?
Yeah, we have maintainer Jan Dubois from Suze, and we also have about 60 contributors. Yeah, so I don't have a screenshot, but in the GitHub repo, you can see 60 contributors, and also we have lots of third-party projects, and we also have more than 9,000 stars on the GitHub.
Got it.
And we are looking for more maintenance.
Are you planning to eventually go into incubation, or is it?
Yeah, eventually integration and maybe graduated in the future. Yeah, but for that we need to expand community to get more contributors and maintenance.
Got it. Makes sense.
I have a question about, I can see here you have this Lima nerd CTL. Can you give a little bit of explanation? Sorry, I kind of joined a little bit late, but can you give an explanation as to how you process the nerd CTL subcommands? Does Lima sort of invoke this, or are you like mapping nerd CTL and then all the subcommands of nerd CTL or Docker or whatever to then generate the virtual machine image?
So Lima CTL is just like a quantary wrapper to run SSH localhost port.
I see. Okay.
Run that.
Sees the nerd CTL command into the VM.
Yeah. So it's just quantary wrapper to run that CTL inside SSH. So yeah. So that CTL client runs inside Linux VM. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Yeah, it makes sense. So Lima proxies the command, essentially.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it works with rootless containers, right? So that integration is seamless, right?
So the direct integration of what?
With rootless containers. Rootless.
Yeah, rootless containers by default.
Well, is it by, I mean, is it by default or not? Or I mean, is it integrated? I mean, you mentioned it, so I'm just curious how it all works. So
The default is to use Redress functionality. It's very similar to Redress Docker and Redress Postman. So everything is running node user inside Linux VM using Linux kernel's username space. And also you don't need any root privilege on the macOS as well.
gotcha. And then you can instantiate the containers with user ID 0 if you like to. Okay.
Yeah, so inside the container you can have UID 0, but it's mapped to non-root user.
Got it. Well, thank you very much. This is great. I'm looking forward to seeing the project mature and grow the community. Yeah, it's
Thank you.
very exciting, and I think this will be really useful for a lot of people.
Thank you.
Any other final questions? So before we move on to, I think Michelle has some item on the agenda.
It seems no. So should I stop sharing my screen?
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
Michelle, you want to talk about your item on the agenda about?
Sure. So yeah, first of all, welcome. I'm from CGAPS, and I'm like the main author of the CAP called Retriable and Not Retriable Pod Failures for Jobs. And while working on this, so what we are doing in this CAP, one of the things is that we want to annotate failed pods with pod conditions that would indicate what was the reason of the failure, so that then users can write some failure policies that would handle the failure, either by retrying it or failing the job if the pod doesn't is likely not to succeed on another node. So as part of this, we want to be able to detect if a pod exceeds memory limits. So that was like our first motivation. And the way we can discover exceeding memory limits is by observing that there is out of memory or unkilled reason in the container status. And this is how we, discovered that this is how containerd and CR does it. Do it. So these are like the major implementations of the container runtime interface. But up to my knowledge or our knowledge, this is not standardized. So like a couple of days back, I posted a message on CNCF TAG-Runtime mailing list asking for some, I don't know, advice how to proceed with the standardization, and if there is like a need. I feel there is a need, because actually our CAP, what we propose potentially could break if the container runtimes communicate to kubelet the out of memory in a different way in the future, then our code may break. So it's sort of important for us, but yeah, for like we need some sort of advice on how to proceed, whether it's like a GitHub issue, discussions, then let's say who should do it. I can go in like maybe more details to the message, but I don't know. Maybe that's enough for the heads up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think
please.
from next steps, I think I'm not really sure if you're actually contacted the Container D community, so it might be a good idea to attend their community meeting and bring it up there. Obviously, you can open a GitHub issue. I mean, there's a CAP already. There's also Signode and Kubernetes. I think you already sent to them. So just kind of start more of the discussion also in those groups to try to get people together on the idea. So try to get some traction on that, and maybe also you can come up with a proposal of the standard and share it with these groups. I mean, within TAG-Runtime, within Signode and Container D. So trying to get people together on the same page. So ultimately, I mean, if people want to kind of collaborate, the TAG-Runtime, has the ability to create a working group, and so the people together can tackle a specific problem around standards, right? And in your case, would be standards about out of memory. I mean, it sounds like it's kind of the scope is kind of small. Doesn't seem like it's that big, but that option is also there. If you want to like create a working group.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think those are the kind of like the next steps that I think it could help out. And to be able to just get more involvement from the community and get people to agree on a standard. Sense?
Okay. Makes sense. So I guess the next step would be to like get, as you suggest, into the Container D meetings to get into some discussions with some people who drive the project, and then
Yeah, because
maybe
I think
there is already some
yeah, I think
interest
in
in
the
that.
case of TAG-Runtime, I mean, TAG-Runtime focuses on multiple projects, and then the scope seems kind of a little bit very very specific to just this to out of memory and memory within the kubelet and Container D, right? So yeah, and yeah, you could actually drive it. Basically, you could just create a document. Maybe you have the cap already. I haven't looked at the cap, but you continue to drive that and continue to get more consensus around the community where to go, right? Is the cap actually in progress now? Like, has it been reviewed, or what's the status of that?
Yes, so the cap has been merged in, so it's merged in for beta, so approved for beta, and now we will start the implementation phase for beta, which will include kubelet changes to observe the out of memory reason, and then sort of translate it into the pod condition. So we in beta, during the implementation, we will rely on this particular implementation. So yeah, but it wasn't like blocked, but probably before we graduate to GA, there is a graduation like requirement criteria for GA, so that we made some progress on the standardization of that.
Got it.
So we are
Yeah.
going to proceed.
Yeah. So yeah, getting
Yeah.
involved with those Container D, getting consensus from Signode, and yeah, that everybody's on the same page, and will help you, go into GA, right? So, but yeah, it's more about like some sort of like a little bit of relationship building between the different groups.
Okay, sure. So yeah, I guess I will just yeah continue trying to participate in the meetings and getting to know who are the people who would be interested in collaborating, and I can also drive this probably myself a little bit. So we'll see.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
thanks.
Thank you.
And essentially about working on the proposal. In the message itself, I posted some proposed solution which I discussed with my colleague. I don't know if you had a chance already to look at it, but maybe if you look at this, maybe you can also advise if because there is some concrete proposal on the. So first of all, the proposal from us would be to. I don't know if this is even a good idea. I don't know how these things are done. So currently the reason is just a string, like a free string. It can be anything, but it happens so that the implementation said it all killed. To just maybe document that this string in case of killed event equals to killed, and then this would force the implementators to follow what's documented. Is it like something sensible?
Yeah, it sounds good to me. I mean, it's just, well, you probably need to get a little more consensus, but I mean, it doesn't sound like very complicated, right? So
Yeah,
it's a kind of very specific feature. So, and I think the Kubernetes community also should be able to approve this, and so I don't see any. It's a major thing.
So this sounds simplest, right? Because we don't need to do anything, just document the field a little bit better.
Right,
So
right. So there may be
and
some
then there is another different, the second part of our problem, but this is maybe less important because this wouldn't cause us to break, is to make the feature better, is to convey the information if the killed was involved due to actually exceeding the limits, which we want perfectly, or it was just the system was running low on memory. So this might be a little bit trickier to standardize.
But also what I can tell you, this will be really useful. I mean, for Kubernetes, I've actually run Kubernetes in production a few years already, and this is a common issue, right? So in the more information you have to be able to debug, and the better, right? So I think Kubernetes users will be will like this feature, basically, or will find it useful.
Okay. So I think it makes sense to sort of keep them connected by some context, but maybe separate, because the solution to first is very simple, probably just documenting, and for the second it may involve also changes to the runtime implementations. So
yeah.
I had a quick question. So for the first one around documentation, can we add that as a disclaimer to the Kubernetes docs, or has it already been added?
Disclaimer to the.
Well, not disclaimer might be the wrong word. Just extending the documentation there that the killed message might be due to the two reasons that you suggested. So instead of chasing the API documentation, like what you suggested, we should do that, but it might take some time. So as a stopgap, would it be helpful to just update Kubernetes documentation?
There is already some documentation, Kubernetes documentation mentioning out of memory killer. I'm not sure if this is explicitly expressed there. I'm just looking it up.
Michelle, maybe you can share your screen. It might
maybe. But yeah, I guess, I was thinking specifically about this CRI API. There is this repo, and then documenting this in the proto for the
that would
reason.
Make more sense, not refuting that, just until that's done, if it would make sense to update Kubernetes docs. But just an idea, just thinking out loud.
Yeah, makes sense, definitely, but not
Yeah, Michelle,
sure if, because the documentation is mostly for like end users, and what we care about is that the implementators don't break it. Not
That's
sure
right.
if it's
Yeah.
the same audience. But certainly like raising some sort of, we plan to add this actually for our CAP in the documentation for the CAP. Maybe we will also consider mentioning this in other places. But yeah, we plan to make it like very explicit too, that there are these two possible reasons currently, and there is no way of distinguishing. So that's what we will definitely document for beta for this CAP. Inside the Kubernetes documentation.
sounds good. Yeah, Michelle, you can also contact Nikita. I think Nikita, she was in the Kubernetes steering committee, so she also can actually provide you some pointers to people who you can talk to.
Yeah, I think you're already in touch with Node folks, but if you need any help with getting specific people to reach out to, let me know.
Okay, great. I will. Yeah, I will. So I guess that's all from me. Thank you for the suggestions.
Yep. All right. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a great day. Thank you again, Akihiro, and thank you, Michelle. And anything,
you.
if you
Thank
need
you.
anything, just feel free to send a Slack message to TAG-Runtime or ping anyone of us on Slack. So, all right, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, great. Bye.
Right.
Thank you. Bye.